Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. This is the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation Regular Board of Directors meeting for May 8th, 2025. It is 9 a.m. I'd like to first ask.
The camera's not working.
Okay, we're gonna.
Oh, there it is.
There we go. Good. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and take a roll call to see if we can have a quorum.
Today in attendance, we have Chair Gary Mackler, Directors Sean Sasaki, Jason Bradshaw, Don Mende, and Designee Mary Alice Evans.
We have 5 present, so we do have a quorum to conduct business. I'd like to go to the second item on the agenda, which is the approval of minutes. This is the regular meeting minutes of April 10th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Jay upon.
Oh, Jay Kimura? Good
Morning.
Jay. Before we get to the, for the question, good morning, Jay. Can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay, I need to ask, is there anyone with you in attendance for today's meeting?
no one.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on the minutes, directors? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Before we move into section 3 of the agenda, I would like to ask Gordon Pang to come up, and we are anticipating testimony today. So I'd like to ask Gordon to lay out the ground rules for giving testimony at this meeting. Morning, Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, board members. I'm Gordon Pang, HHFDC Housing Information Officer. Members of the public, we kindly ask that you write your name legibly on the attendance sheet that is outside as you enter the meeting room. This will help us maintain a better record. Separately, anyone in the public who wishes to Secondly, anyone in the public who wishes to present oral testimony today should also sign up on the testifier sheet. You may also indicate your intent to do so by signaling to the chair. Your testimony must be related to an item on the board agenda, and your name will be called when the item comes up on the agenda. We ask that before you begin your testimony, that you identify yourself and spell your name in a clear manner for the record. After 3 minutes, you will hear me call time. You will then have 15 seconds to conclude your testimony. Please keep in mind, this is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts with the board. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to respond. If you wish to submit written testimony, instructions on submitting written testimony can be found on the front page of this agenda under the section titled Public Testimony. Mahalo for your cooperation.
Thank you, Gordon. I'd like to go to item 3A of today's agenda. This is to approve a request to amend the project target population for the Kokua project located in Honolulu, Oahu. TMK number is 2-1-010-052 and 053. We have a motion to approve. Directors. We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay. Is there, before we have staff present, I would like to ask if there's anyone wishing to give testimony on this agenda item. If not, we'll turn it over to our finance manager, David. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. David White, Finance Manager for HHFDC. This request is for to ask the board to approve amending the target population for the Kokua Hale project located at 1192 Alakia Street in Honolulu. Currently, the project is designated for elderly households. The proposed amendment would allow up to 20% of the units to be occupied by households under the age of 55. Kukuhale is a 224 unit new construction project developed under a fee simple arrangement by allocated senior LP. HHFDC financed this project with 48.9 million in Bulame multifamily tax exempt bonds, 3.14 million in annual federal 4% LIHTC over 10 years and annual state LIHTC over 5 years, as well as a $35.85 million rental housing revolving fund loan. This was all approved in September, closed in September 2021. The certificate of occupancy for the project was approved and issued on November 6th, 2023. The current status of the project is, as of April 2025, the project remains below the stabilized occupancy rate, which is defined as 90 days of continuous occupancy at 95%. Despite significant marketing efforts, which included 1,700 lottery entries and over 500 processed applications, lease-up has been slower on the project than originally anticipated. The main barriers that have been cited by prospective tenants include small unit size, lack of parking, and the current lease-up pace is at approximately 10 units per month. Originally, during the market study and the projections by the project, the lease-up had been targeted at 18 to 24 units per month. Incentives have been offered in various forms to applicants, including discounted rent, lowered security deposits, and gift cards, but lease-up has currently stalled on the project. In response to this, the developer is requesting to amend the elderly restriction to allow up to 20% of households to be under the age of 55. This proposed amendment would remain compliant with the Housing for Older Persons Act, that at least 80% of the units must be occupied by households with one member age 55 plus, but reserved for elderly. HHFDC has no conflicting definition of elderly in its administrative rules. The Housing for Older Persons Act is consistent with federal and state statutes, including HRS Chapter 201H-1 and Section 3607B2 of the US Code. If this request were not approved and the project were not able to lease up and stabilize in time for a permanent conversion, the project could incur default under the bond and loan documents in place. There would be significant delays in the contribution from investors for LIHTC distribution to the project. This all leads to increased interest and carrying costs for the project in the interim until they can convert to permanent financing. And this would also violate the current terms as approved for the rental housing revolving fund loan for when the project is supposed to be finalized and start making its payments. Staff has reviewed this request statute and requests that the board approve the amendment to permit the occupancy of up to 20% of the households in Kukuhale to be tenants under the age of 55, with a minimum at all times of 80% reserved for households with at least one member over the age of 55. We're also requiring the developer to adopt and enforce written policies and procedures to remain compliant with Housing for Older Persons Act standards, and to authorize the executive director to undertake all necessary tasks to implement this for action. The developer is with us via Zoom through audio if there are any questions from the board.
Thank you. Directors, do you have questions for staff or for the developer? I do have a question. So basically, the approval of this for action would free up 20% of the units in the project from the age restriction, having at least one member 55 and older.
Correct. And this is allowed under federal statute for the definition of an elderly project. So it's differing from the original approval that the board intended.
So if we approve this for action and this project reaches stabilized occupancy and is able to complete its loan conversion, would it be appropriate or possible to thereafter provide a lease preference to those who have households in which at least one member is 55 and older. In other words, to try to bring it to sort of write it back into the original intent of this project. Is that, I don't know if I should ask the developer that question or.
I think staff would be in favor of that, but I think the developer, Mo, if you're with us, I think that would be something that you would have to work with the managing agent. I see your hand up, so.
We asked Mo if he wants to comment on that.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sorry. This format's slightly different than the standard. I can't even find the camera for some reason, so apologies if my camera is not on. Thank you for, Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for your consideration. We thank the staff for working through with us on this. We've expended every effort on this community. It is a community that we stepped in and worked closely with HHFDC to take it on from another developer to bring it to where it is today. Understanding the challenges, we went far beyond just reducing rents. We also furnished the units. We came up with innovative furnishings like Murphy beds in order to kind of create the space, some which was very well received, some liked them. We've also provided fully furnished units, all included in the rent cost, not increasing it at all. The reality of the market, based on another market study that we completed back in June of last year for another affordable housing senior development that we worked with HHFDC, determined that at this time there is a glut in the senior market. And therefore, with many choices, someone's going to go down the street, and if they find a one bedroom available, they would rather take that instead. But the appraisal does believe in a number of years that this market would correct itself. But for the time being, that is the challenge that we're having. A similar sister property down the street, HSR, which Michaels is also managing for us, also took over 2 years, which seems to be the time frame that we're taking to rent up. So it's not that we're facing anything new that and other people are not facing despite the units, but it's just simply right now the demand is not there. As to the question specifically, Mr. Chair, I agree with you, and we internally have discussed. We would like to see the turnover as the 20% leave that we give priority to those seniors. If we have somebody that meets the age restriction, we would like to see this property revert at the end after the turnover of the 20% to 100% senior. So it is our intention, and we believe that is also fair for the residents that are there already to see that. Right now, we're trying to address the situation and make sure we put this project in the best financially feasible position with our partners, HHFDC, and our lender and investor.
Any other questions, directors? Thank you, Mo. But this time I will call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next up is item 3B on the agenda, which is to approve an amendment to the memorandum of agreement with the County of Maui relating to the Haleʻolaʻi project formerly known as Hagai International Mid-Pacific Center located at 175 East Lipoa Street, Kihei, Maui, TMK number 3-9-002-084, and 2, an amendment to the ground lease of the property, and 3, an amendment to the regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants with the county. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to give testimony on this agenda item? Hearing none, we'll turn it to staff. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Hunter Miller. I'm an analyst for the Planning, Evaluation, and Compliance branch here at HHFDC. The action before you is to approve amendments to the Memorandum of Agreement, Ground Lease, and Regulatory Agreement and Declaration of Restricted Covenants with the County of Maui relating to the Haleʻolaʻi property located in Kihei, Maui. On June 30th, 2023, the governor enacted Act 164, Session Laws of Hawaii 2023, which appropriated $45 million in general obligation bonds to HHFDC for the acquisition, design, and construction of repurposing the former Hagai International Mid-Pacific Center, a 178-room former hotel and Christian Missionary Training Center, into dedicated teacher housing and affordable workforce housing and pre-kindergarten classrooms. Before the acquisition of the property, HHFDC planned to establish a long-term ground lease with the County of Maui, which would take on the redevelopment of the property into affordable and teacher housing. Staff from HHFDC and the County of Maui were in discussions to finalize the details and responsibilities of the county under the ground lease. However, on August 8th, 2023, the Maui wildfires swept through Lahaina and Kula, which placed significant demands on the county and which made the county's possession of the property at the time of the proposed acquisition infeasible. Staff planned to proceed with the acquisition under an interim ownership and operation plan in which HHFDC would manage the property until May 30th, 2025, at which point the county would take over. During this interim ownership period, the Hawaii Interim Housing Program would use the property as temporary housing for survivors of the wildfire disaster. At the November 9th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting, the Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation Board approved staff's request to acquire the property based on the post-closing plan of interim ownership and operation. HHFDC acquired the property on March 28th, 2024, and simultaneously entered into a memorandum of agreement, ground lease, and regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants with the County of Maui. Conversations between HHFDC and the county to amend these agreements to allow for extended use of the property for temporary wildfire survivor housing began in November of 2024, as the agreements did not provide for temporary housing use beyond the May 30th, 2025 commencement date of the ground lease. During these conversations, the County of Maui requested to extend the start date of the ground lease due to staffing shortages and the state's desire to continue the Hawaii Interim Housing Program at the property. Conversations are ongoing between HHFDC, the County of Maui, the Department of Human Services, and the Hawaii Interim Housing Program to finalize details of the temporary housing of Maui wildfire survivors, the final details of the amended agreements, and the transition timeline of the property from HHFDC to the county. The current contemplated amendments to the memorandum of agreement, ground lease, and regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants are as follows. Under the amended memorandum of agreement, the interim ownership period would be amended to extend the period in which HHFDC will primarily operate the property to provide temporary housing and workspaces to persons and organizations which are involved in the response and recovery from the disaster. During this extended period, HHFDC will extend its property management contract with Paramount Hotels, who's the current property manager, until June 30th of 2025. A transition period will be inserted into the MOA to establish the role each party will have in transitioning the property from HHFDC control to the County of Maui. The Department of Human Services will contract with a qualified firm to provide day-to-day property management for the property to commence on July 1st of 2025 and conclude on August 31st, 2026. On September 1st, 2026, the county must then contract with a qualified firm to provide day-to-day property management for the property for the remainder of the term under the ground lease. The Department of Human Services will be added as a party to the MOA, or a new MOA will be created for the purposes of transferring the responsibility of operating the property and property management from HHFDC to the Department of Human Services on July 1st of 2025. The key terms of the proposed amendment to the ground lease for the county are: the commencement date would be amended to July 1st of 2025 to better align with the fiscal year 2026 with the county. HHFDC will extend its contract with Paramount Hotels to provide property management services at the property through June 30th of 2025. The capital improvement plan would be amended to reflect July 1st, 2027 as the deadline for which HHFDC and the county are to agree upon the timeline, scope, and minimum amount to be expended for the conversion of the property into a dedicated teacher housing and affordable workforce housing project with pre-kindergarten classrooms. The deadline for the capital improvement plan would then be 5 years after the commencement date of the capital improvement plan. The special terms and conditions to the original ground lease would be amended to reflect the responsibilities transferred to the Department of Human Services to primarily operate the property to provide temporary housing to persons in response to and recovery from the disaster of wildfires from July 1st, 2025 until August 31st of 2026. And the proposed amendment to the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants and Regulatory Agreement is the HHFDC and the county would agree that the Hawaii Interim Housing Program is a permitted use of the project or of the property for disaster recovery purposes from the effective date of the agreement until August 31st of 2028, as consistent with the terms of the ground lease. Because the Maui County Council must approve the final form of the amended memorandum of agreement, ground lease, and regulatory agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants before their execution by the County of Maui, the remaining timeline for the execution of these amended agreements is largely driven by the County Council rules and conclusion of negotiations between the parties. It's staff's recommendation that the HHFDC Board of Directors approve amending the MOA regarding the property with the county, approve amending the ground lease of the property with the county, approve amending the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants and Regulatory Agreement of the property with the county, and authorize the Executive Director to undertake all tasks necessary to effectuate the purposes for this for action substantially the terms described herein.
Directors, questions? Go right ahead, Director Ensign.
I support the staff's recommendation, but I had a couple of questions about the status of the project. Have renovations commenced to, have renovations commenced convert the hotel rooms into apartments with kitchens and bathrooms?
No, so renovations have not commenced for that. There have been some capital improvements that have been ongoing just for the long-term structural needs for the property. The conversion of units into long-term affordable housing, that will not happen until July 1st of 2027. And there's a capital improvement plan that all of that will.
And that will be the responsibility of the state or the county?
That will be the responsibility of the county.
Other question, Chair?
Please.
What's the current occupancy of the facility?
Right now, I believe 140 rooms of the 178 are occupied.
Thank you, Chair. No more questions.
Are there any other questions, directors?
I have a question, Chair. This is Louis.
Louis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was a little bit late. So of the current occupants right now, it was my understanding originally it was to house like the people that were working related to the disaster. So now we actually have the impacted residents and the survivors that are actually occupying these spaces now?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And so the timeline, the original timeline, I guess, you know, when we acquired the property before, I'm just trying to piece together the timeline. When we when we were given the appropriation to acquire it was before the fire, understanding the fire happened, kind of prolonged the issue. So we were expected to have turned this over to Maui County literally like a year ago, I would think, to do the original, you know, workforce housing, teacher, the school and everything. We're just prolonging it now for another year. So DHS is going to take over come July 1st. And they're going to be kind of the people working with the County of Maui?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Are we going to be on the hook for any operational costs associated with the property during this period of time?
No, we will not be.
Okay, great.
State of Hawaii is.
Yeah, the state of Hawaii will be, but Hawaii Housing Finance Development Corporation specifically will not be.
In this particular case, I'm only worried about the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. I just want to make sure that again, as a secretary to this particular board, that you know that we're not going to be on the hook for anything because again, our original plans have changed during that time, and I'd like to see us get to what the original intent of the acquisition of the property was. Thank you, Chair. That's what I wanted. Just wanted to make sure that I understood the timeline.
Thanks, Louis. Anyone else? Questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3C on the agenda. This is to approve the state of Hawaii 5-year consolidated plan for program years 2025 through 2029 and annual action plan for program year 2025 for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Community Planning and Development's Home Investment Partnerships, National Housing Trust Fund, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS programs. Is there a motion to approve this for action?
So.
We have a motion and we have a second. Hello, good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Carrie Higa and I'm a planner here at HHFDC. This for action seeks your approval for the 5-year consolidated plan or plan and the 2025 annual action plan, which covers HUD's Home Investment Partnership Program, the Housing Trust Fund Program, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Program. The intent of these federal programs is to strengthen communities and provide decent, affordable housing for families and special needs populations. Annually, HHFDC rotates its home funds among Hawaii, Kauai, and Maui counties. For 2025, HHFDC anticipates receiving approximately $3 million in home funds. HHFDC will award the funds to the County of Kauai, which will use funds toward the development of affordable rental units and increasing home ownership units for families earning 80% of the area median income or below. The Homeless Programs Office of the state's Department of Human Services administers the HHFDC program, under which DHS anticipates receiving approximately $300,000 for program year 2025. Funds will be used toward providing financial assistance and services to individuals with HIV or AIDS who are homeless and at risk of homelessness. Under the National Housing Trust Fund program, HHFDC anticipates receiving approximately $3 million for program year 2025. Hawaii County will use HTF program funds toward the production or preservation of rental housing for extremely low-income families earning 30% of the area median income or below. Exhibit A shows the state's goals, planned activities, to meet these goals, and also anticipated outcomes as a result of these activities over the next 5-year period. The state's program year 2025 annual action plan focuses on the allocation of funds by activity type and objective instead of specific projects. Upon selection of each project, the County of Kauai will inform the community by issuing a 30-day public notice containing detailed project information. The draft comp plan and 2025 annual action plan were subject to a 30-day public comment period and no comments were received. The action plan is also an application for home, HTF, and HHFDC funds due to HUD 60 days after the actual allocation amounts are announced. So if approved, we anticipate submitting the action plan to HUD once allocations are announced and necessary signatures are obtained. Staff respectfully recommends approval of the 5-year comp plan and annual action plan for program year 2025.
We have Director has a question. Director Bradshaw?
A majority of these are federal funds, right? Have you had conversations with the current administration who's at risk due to the number of budget cuts that we're anticipating from the budget coming down from the current president?
Yeah, so we've been in touch with our HUD rep. There hasn't been much information, but back in planning, we are keeping an eye on these programs and looking to see what kind of impacts.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? This is Louis.
Director Salaveria, yes.
So yes, it's my understanding that HUD awards are gonna be potentially up for reductions in federal fiscal year 26. So I'd highly recommend that we proceed forward with this 25 allocation and try to expend as much money as we can right now and stuff. But I think the concern, and I think Chair Bradshaw brings it, or Director Bradshaw brings it up pretty well, is we need to be worried about this program in the next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it is important to note that these programs provide a source of gap financing for various rental projects that we also assist. So it's a key financing source for a lot of projects. And Carrie, thank you for putting this together. I know it's a lot of work, believe it or not. It's a tremendous amount of work to do this. And to have that look forward for 5 years to prioritize these resources through the community-driven process. And appreciate all your work. Thank you. Is there anyone like to give testimony for this agenda item? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the 4 action to approve signify by saying aye.
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 Yep. Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Carrie. Okay, we'll go on today's agenda to item 3, section 3D. This is discussion regarding the dwelling unit revolving fund loan for the 803 Waimanu for sale condominium project located in Kaka'ako, Oahu, TMK number 12-1-049-084. So we are not needing any motions today. Albert, would you like to present? Or you just want us to ask you questions?
Oh, okay. So the 803 Romanu project, also known as the block 803 Romanu. We brought a 4 action last month that was deferred, where the borrower had requested a conversion of up to 17 units from affordable to market. And the board had asked for us to bring a board discussion with additional information. So there's no action to be taken today. We're considering in the forward discussion several items or several options. The first option would be to take no action, which would preserve the affordability requirements as they currently are. With the current prices, it would not be possible for HHFDC to collect its accrued interest. Based on financial modeling, forecasting future sales at a rate similar to the current rate, the senior loan could be paid off in about 20 months. And at that time, there would no longer be sufficient revenue available to repay the entire DERF loan principal. Second option would be to approve the borrower's request as it is to convert up to 17 affordable units to market rate. Repricing these units is anticipated to provide enough unsold value to cover the DERF principal and accrued interest at the present time. Under forecasting conditions showing, for example, 2 unit sales per month until the market units are sold and then 1 unit per month thereafter, senior loan could be paid off in about 10 months. And at that time, the DERF principal could be fully covered. However, there would be insufficient revenues to pay the accrued DERF interest after approximately 24 months. Due to the application of proceeds to accrued interest first before principal, this forecasting model does show an uncollected balance of DERF principal at the end of unit sales. However, the total amount of repayment received by HHFDC by that time could be in excess of the original principal amount. A third option would be to allow the conversion of some affordable units to market, but to further impose some additional conditions on those units. There's multiple options for additional conditions as listed in section 3B3. A fourth option could be to allow the sale of some or all of the unsold units to a nonprofit entity which can rent the units out subject to affordability restrictions. The borrower has previously inquired about the possibility of converting some units to rental, but had not previously provided a a request with a plan for doing so that would show how to pay back the DERF loan in a timely manner. Doing such a thing through a bulk sale does repay the DERF loan. A fifth option is that HHFDC can take out the senior loan. The senior loan interest is 10% per year, which is currently approximately $50,000 per month. One option for taking out the senior loan is for HHFDC to simply expand its DERF loan. Another option is for HHFDC itself to purchase a number of unsold units, which would be sufficient to pay off the senior loan by expending funds from DERF. HHFDC would recover its costs to purchase the units, less transaction and carrying costs when it resells the units to affordable buyers. Either of these options results in the elimination of the senior loan interest and puts HHFDC in the senior loan position, which protects its principal balance. A sixth option is presented, which is similar to the previous, except that after HHFDC purchases units, it could institute a rent-to-own program. Staff is optimistic about this option and its potential to help buyers by providing alternative avenues to homeownership for first-time homebuyers. The seventh option talks about requiring the borrower to apply specific marketing strategies to the project as listed in section 3B7. There are also some items listed in section 3C that are recommended to be applied to the project regardless of the options pursued. And that is what I have for the summary of the board session.
Thank you. So I'd like to, I'd like to open it for discussion, directors, questions or comments?
This is the project,
We'll go ahead, Jason. Yeah, sorry.
this is the project, we also discussed the possibility that we could talk to HIDO, right, about possible teacher or workforce housing. Is that conversation gonna happen so we can potentially get an answer whether or not that's a possibility for?
So I've requested information a couple of times from the borrower about like specific what contacts were made when. I haven't gotten that level of specificity. They have said they have reached out, but I haven't gotten like a list of exactly what efforts were made.
Is there a chance that we could get some information from HIDO maybe for the next meeting?
It's possible, but that doesn't really, I think part of the strategy should be that more robust marketing efforts. That doesn't necessarily solve the question of the recovery of the DERF loan at this time.
Director Evans?
Would not resolving the senior loans loan have on future projects that may need a partnership with a lender to co-lend with HHFDC. In other words, if we allow the borrower to default on the senior loan, will that make it mean that there be higher interest rates because of greater risk seen because the HHFDC did not step in to protect the senior loan?
That I don't know. I do know under the current senior loan, the senior loan interest rate does increase if there's a default under our loan, for example. If the senior loan were to go to foreclosure, my understanding is at a foreclosure auction, the senior lender would be allowed to bid the amount of their debt on a non-cash basis. And other bids by other parties, including HHFDC, would have to be on a cash basis. If HHFDC was the senior lender, it could bid non-cash for its debt. Is my understanding of how it works.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. What kind of precedent are we setting if we purchase these units?
We are interested in implementing a rent-to-own program in general. We're reviving that program. So it's something we are looking to do. I don't know if there's a negative precedent that directly transfers.
And do you think you would be able to conduct adequate due diligence ahead of any potential purchase of units, of the condition, the financial condition of the project, its reserves, those kinds of things?
So Chair, right now we're trying to balance basically maintaining affordability versus recouping our investment in the property. And so we're looking at options 5 and 6, basically. We're taking out the senior lender so that we're in first position, or in conjunction with that, possibly creating a rental program. The other options have, that would set a precedent, I think, that we don't, if not like you said. Allowing a bulk sale to a non-qualified resident, for example, is not something we have done in the past. Converting, I think for the board's position, I'm converting more this to market rate. So that's not the preference of the board. So looking at options 5 and 6, to do this though, we would need to conduct more due diligence to understand what risk we're taking by being in that senior position.
Other questions? Question from the side here.
Good morning, board. Just like to mention that the developer is here today to answer questions that you may have.
Okay, before we hear from the developer, I would like to ask if there's anyone present or viewing the meeting remotely that would like to give testimony.
Chair, it's Louis.
Yes, Louis.
I just said, again, and maybe this is a question, and maybe since the developer is here, obviously there was a reason why these units didn't move, and I don't remember from our previous, from the previous meeting when this issue did first come up, but maybe for the record, just kind of understanding from our perspective why these units aren't moving. I mean, we had the affordability, provisions inside there, but are there other reasons that we as a board are not seeing why these units are not moving? And maybe that's something that the developer can at least enlighten us with.
Yeah, if I can speak to that a little first. There's several reasons. This project was originally conceived, I think, around 2015 or even earlier. At that time, it was anticipated this would be a TOD project. The county removed a lot of minimum parking requirements for projects, and as we know, the rail has not arrived near this project yet. So it does have limited parking. Of the units remaining, very few have parking stalls. The parking stalls that are available are in a mechanical lift system, which people are unfamiliar with and may be uncomfortable with. The building itself has a specific aesthetic that doesn't necessarily appeal to all buyers, but does appeal to some. There's also been a lot more options coming on the market lately in terms of other projects that have come online since then. There was the COVID issue as well, in that before COVID, I think the project had met its pre-sale requirement for the senior lender. And after COVID, a lot of those borrowers were no longer qualified and fell out. So there was a bulk sale originally when this thing originally was completed. I think it was 80 something units, and it's since then now at I think 104 sold with 49 unsold. There have been issues with getting buyer lenders. At one point, there was a mechanics lien from the contractor, which had to be cleared up, which stalled some sales for a while because those lenders were only willing to do portfolio loans at 20% down. There's just been a lot. It's like a perfect storm with this project, really. But because also it's not 75% sold out, lenders are hesitant about the resale value of their collateral. So getting more units sold or just occupied as rental would probably help with the sale of the remaining units.
Thank you.
Okay, what I'm gonna do right now, Albert, is ask for public testimony. See if anybody has testimony they'd like to give to the board. Is there anyone, coming up?
A copy for the board. Good morning, Chair Mackler,
Good morning.
the rest of the Board of Directors, Executive Director Mikami. We talked about this project was first approved in 2015. The rail itself was first approved in 2006. Oh, sorry, Herbert Allen, I'm a resident at the building. The project was first approved in 2015. The rail itself was approved in 2006 and had planned completion around 2017. Rail had ran into lots of problems before this project even started. August 2012, rail construction was halted for 13 months because of an EIS. Planning your projects based on a Hawaii infrastructure project is, not the best. If you anticipate the infrastructure coming through on time, that's probably an oversight on your part. By 2018, the planned completion date of rail was already slipped to September 2026 before building construction even started. At no point was anyone forced to move forward with this project. I would like to thank Mr. Mola for taking the business risk of putting this project together and actually building a building. It's existing, I live in it. But at the same time, a business risk is a risk, and sometimes they don't pan out. I'd also like to thank Chief Albert Palmer for preparing today's discussion items. They have a lot of, and the rest of HHFDC staff, because there are a lot of great options in here. I like the rent to own one specifically. It was very hard for me to come up with the enough down to be able to purchase a unit. I believe a lot of us bought into the building because it was supposed to be a high affordability percentage, which also included a high owner occupancy. People who have both a literal and figurative investment in the building. People who care about it, people who want to, be a part of a community. I'd also like to point out that HHFDC's loan right now was much lower than the market rate for mortgages. We also talk about parking. Parking is available to rent nearby. Pacific Park Plaza on Curtis Street rents spaces for approximately $205 a month, which at current mortgage rates would be much cheaper than financing the additional cost of buying a deeded parking stall. And should rail actually be completed, that would allow you flexibility when you could potentially get rid of your car. My last things to say are that if there are going to be releases of HHFDC restrictions on units, I think those same opportunities should be provided to the existing owners who are in HHFDC programs. And the final thing I'd like to say is that, too often, I work for the government as well. Too often we do the easy thing and not the hard thing, not the right thing. So some say, why affordable housing? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 23 years ago, start the rail project? Why do the Bows play the Bulldogs? We choose to provide affordable housing. We choose to provide affordable housing in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our population here in Hawaii. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to do, and the others too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to give testimony for this agenda item? You can ask Mr. Mola to come up.
Good morning. Thanks for considering our proposals. Just to give you a little background on myself, I built, sold, leased over 1,200 units here in Hawaii, all affordable. this has not been a sweet spot in anybody's life, but I've been doing this for a long time, and COVID, interest rates. I mean, I don't have to bore you with those details, but they affect us. And so we've never defaulted, and we don't plan to. So, and we take this debt seriously. So we appreciate all the help that we've gotten to date. But I also want to tell you that we've worked hard to get to where we are. You know, we closed 3 units last month. Talked about outreach that we went out to, and so we've contacted just about every brokerage on Island. So we're all aware of the project. We sent out bell packs last year to 3 zip codes. We posted an article in 24, cost $13,000. We got 2 responses. You know, the interest rates, when we started, a 30-year loan was 3.5. We projected 4.5. It's now over 7. So we sent out information to the Department of Ed. We sent out to Wilson Group, which has over 1,000 nurses. Everybody's aware of the project. Since we were here last time, not last month, but the time before that, you know, we've sold units. But it's still a challenge. But I can tell you that as long as I'm around, we're here to work it through. You know, I don't think we're the only projects in town that are having issues, but that's not an excuse. The only excuse there is that affordable housing is not easy. I've been doing it for a long time. It takes a long time to get it approved. It takes a long time to get it financed. And the market in general, if you hit a sweet spot, then everything goes wonderful. You know, you've got a line of people out, you provided the housing, but we're not in that market. I mean, every morning there's an article about housing and difficulty selling houses, be it resale or a new basis. So we're here to work to get it done. And I hope to look at what we've done to date, which, I mean, we're not at 0. And 2, the history of our group to deliver this type of product. And to let you know, we have a commitment. We have a commitment to you because you've allowed us to proceed in this type of project. It's the kind of business that we do. That's all we do. So my suggestion is this, you know, I don't say I'm a marketing guru. I just had a lot of experience in doing this. We built and sold over 6,000 units in my career. We know how to market things. This has just not been the best time, or it's just not worked out as well. What I'd like to ask is that you approve option 2, which is basically the conversion of some of the units to market. And I'd also like you to consider a rent to own and let us administer that rent to own. Because my plan financially is to be done with this project in terms of getting HFFDC out within the next year. I think we can do that. I need your consideration. I need your faith in our background and our commitment to deliver this project and to get through this process. So I appreciate staff's work very diligently with us. And I appreciate also the extensions that we've gotten from you and your patience. But I also like to ask that we be given the opportunity to finish the job that we started. With that, I open up the question.
Sure. Directors, any questions for Mr. Mola?
I have one question. Mr. Mola, is it in your request, under information item 2, is converting up to 17 affordable units to market, is it the price or is it the buyer restrictions that would be the most impactful in terms of selling these units?
Well, our issue, and I'm sure it's an issue in this type of market environment. If you have no restrictions, you have no restrictions. But if your competition, and we have competition out there, and see in the resale market as well as in the new market that has comparable pricing, but with no restriction. So a lot of our units that we build are for first-time buyers, and a lot of these young people, are just getting their life going, have kids, not have kids yet, but are about to, and that restriction really impacts them, because normally you could buy a unit. If you're going to go on to a larger unit, then you can rent your unit as an investment and go on. Well, they can't do that under the current program. So the answer to your question is that we'd like you to consider converting these units because we know we can move those units. And our main objective right now is basically to get you paid off. And that's gonna get us there quicker. I mean, the restrictions on when somebody rents a unit, affordable unit, he presents himself as with the ability to pay, and also that he's in a certain percentage income. So our typical renter, 50 or 60% renter, proves that up and it's done. And then once a year, we do a third-party inspection that we've done our job properly. With the way the sales work, not only do we have to prove that their income qualified, but the turnaround time is, somebody just can't come in and buy a unit. So I have to say, here's an application, you fill it out, give it back to me, I give this to HHFDC, they do their work, and then, within 30 to 60 days, we get an approval. Well, I'm not objecting to the process. I'm just letting you know that it makes selling units in a difficult market even more difficult, because it is an emotional purchase. But these restrictions, along with the length of time that people are having to be in escrow, it takes us 120 to 150 days to close a unit because of the process. Again, we know the process. We've been through it many times, but those are issues escalated with the higher interest rates.
Thank you, Chair.
Director Bradshaw.
Yeah, so As you know, local families are struggling to survive in Hawaii. Many of them are leaving Hawaii because they can't afford homes in
Right.
Hawaii. That's one of the problems. So is your intent to, if we were to convert these to 17 market rate, to sell them to local families? Would that, are your,
Most of our people are local families, but there's also people that buy them as an investment. So
it could be investment property as well from a mainland,
because it's just market rate, so.
and that's where the concern I have. Thank you.
Okay, Directors, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Muller.
So, thank you.
Let me just put it out to board members, any suggestions to offer staff at this time, as well as a direction or an option to pursue. It's looking at me. For myself, I'd like to ask staff to explore the rent to purchase option. As much as I'd like to see the DERF loan repaid, I believe these units still need to serve the population that they were originally intended for. And that's a bit of a twist, but it's also a way to continue to deliver units into the affordability groups that we're hoping to serve through the restrictions on this project. So that would be my preference, just to have dialogue with Mr. Mola and his team and to see the possibility is to pursue that.
Chair, we'll continue to work on this and turn to the board with a recommendation at a future date.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay with that, Albert?
Yep.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back.
not
All of us are buying.
I love housing projects,
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting back to order.
no cost.
Next on the agenda is item 3E. And this agenda item is to approve, one, the certification of Nalu Waipoli LLC or other successor entity approved by the executive director as an eligible developer pursuant to section 15-307-24 Hawaii Administrative Rules. And two, a dwelling unit revolving fund permanent loan for the proposed Nalu Waipoli affordable housing project located in Kapa'a, Hawaii, TMK number 4-3-001-014. Is there a motion to approve? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to at this time ask staff to present, and then after staff's presentation, I will invite testimony. And then thereafter, I'll ask directors to, if they have questions. So, good morning, Jim.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Mackler, members of the board. In February of 2025, Nalu Waipoli LLC, the developer, submitted an application for a DERF permanent loan in the amount of $13,722,902 to partially finance the acquisition and rehabilitation of the courtyards at Waipoli, an 82-unit market rental housing development. The courtyards at Waipoli property was originally constructed in 2009 as a restricted affordable rental housing in satisfaction of the Kauai Lagoons affordable housing agreement for rezoning and development. And with the expiration of the county affordability restrictions in 2019, the property is currently being rented as long-term market rents. This Nalu Waipoli project would convert the property back into affordable rentals with options to purchase for the utilization of DHHL beneficiaries. The project proposes to use a rent with option to purchase model that's been successfully implemented by DHHL in Kapolei's Lima project and Laiapua's Village 4 account project. The model is premised on moderate to low income DHHL beneficiaries qualifying for the program, becoming renters of the project units at affordable rates, and then being able to transition to homeowners after the 10-year program compliance period expires. KB Waipoli LLC is the owner of the land and the improvements on the property. Has indicated a desire to convert the project to vacation rentals with a buyer for the project kind of found. DHHL has an option purchase agreement with KB Waipoli LLC. The developer has been selected to rehabilitate and manage the project and will receive a ground lease from DHHL. The developer is a newly formed partnership between Mark Development Incorporated and Hawaii Assisted Housing Incorporated. Mark Development Incorporated is the managing. As for the property, there are currently 10 two-story residential buildings on the property with a total of 82 units comprised of 21 bedroom apartments, 42 two-bedroom apartments, 23 bedroom apartments. And the property also includes a leasing office with a laundry area, exterior seating, barbecue area, and 160 parking spaces, all of which are supposed to be renovated as part of the beautification process. As far as further specifications for the project, the proposed unit and AMI mix includes 3 three-bedroom units at 30% AMI and below, 5 one-bedroom, 32 bedroom, and 5 three-bedroom units at 50% AMI and below, and 15 one-bedroom, 12 two-bedroom, and 12 three-bedroom units at 120% AMI and below. Additional details regarding unit size, proposed rental rates, and so on can be found in section 3 of the 4 action. Proceeding through the 4 action, sections 3O and P show the proposed budget and sources of funds for the project that can be further expanded upon as desired. Of note is the utilization of $25 million in federal Native Hawaiian housing block grant funds, which requires that a relocation plan be prepared to assist the current residents displaced by the project and articulates the assistance services and other protections that are afforded to the displacees. More information on that plan and the current status of the plan can be found in Exhibit C. This 4 action seeks the following terms for the DERF permanent loan of a principal amount of $13,722,902
inclusive of fee amounts made available on a drawdown basis. The loan will be a second mortgage, non-recourse loan secured by the DHHL ground lease to the borrower or other collateral that would be acceptable to HHFDC. An interest rate of 3% compounded annually, loan term of 20 years, an origination fee of 1% or 1 point, an administrative fee of $1,000 per unit, and repayment would be based on 95% of surplus cash annually with principal and accrued interest due upon maturity. Note is that the DERF loan cannot be used for the acquisition costs. The DERF subcommittee has established review guidelines for consideration in managing risk exposure for proposed DERF loans. And the project has a low to moderate risk profile overall, and that can be seen in section 3. Staff's recommendation as the board approve this for action, including the certification of Nalu Vaishali LLC as an eligible developer, DERF permanent loan for the project, and authorize the executive director to undertake all actions necessary to effectuate the purposes of this for action, subject to the availability of funds, the release of funds by the governor, approval as to form in the applicant documents by the Department of the Attorney General and executed by the executive director, and compliance with all applicable laws and regulations and other terms and conditions as may be required by the executive director. The developer is here today to answer any additional questions the board.
Okay, so I think sequentially, what I'm gonna do now is open this one up to public testimony. So hopefully you all heard the ground rules from Gordon Pang at the start of the meeting. Try to keep your testimony to 3 minutes. If you've reached 3 minutes, I'm gonna just ask that you finish up your testimony. So I think we'll start first with those who are present today. If anyone would like to come up and offer testimony on this item.
Right.
Good morning.
Hello, Michael. My name is Dimon Kalaimana Ole. I'm co-manager of Ho'omana Pono LLC, a native Hawaiian advocacy corporation operating out of Waianae Coast. And I would just like to thank you guys for holding this meeting and this issue. It's very important to us as native Hawaiians to be able to return back home to Aina. I was involved with the community aspect part of this project to reach out to the native Hawaiian community. And when I started this, I looked at the landscape. Hawaii had a wait list of like 1,500 native Hawaiians waiting to get back home. And I went down the wait list and I talked to a lot, most of the people that we was able to talk to that is on the continent with the zip codes outside of Hawaii. And almost all of them said they wanted to come home. You know, it's funny, yeah? When you're talking to people who was forced to move away because we cannot live here, when you call them up, they still get 808 as their number. And I asked them, how come you still get 808? You live in California, or you live in Alaska, or you live in Montana. And they tell me because it's the only thing that they have left to be able to stay connected to our Aina. And almost everybody that I talked to was all kupuna age. And they have admitted to me that when they were young, 40 years ago, and they're asked, put on a wait list, they wanted their land. They wanted their acreage of land. They wanted their agricultural parcels. They wanted their pastoral. But now they seniors already. And they have nothing else to do. The kids are grown. And all they can hope for is a little bit of something that is their birthright. This is what we're talking about here. We're talking about people whose birthright is here. And this is important to me because my mom died on a wait list. 1935, my mom was born and raised 1 block away from here, Queen and Cook Street. You guys know where the old Sukenjo stay? Upstairs, that building, it's one of the oldest structures in Kaka'ako. My mom and all her siblings were born in that house, not in a hospital. And Hawaiians were pushed out of the urban core. We ended up in Kalihi and eventually ended up in the homesteads. Waianae, Nanakuli, Wamanalo. So we have always, in Hawaii, we've always struggled to get Hawaiians where we need to be in our own homelands. Waipoli is perfect for a lot of our kupuna because they don't have the ability to take care of their own land. Have a nice little condo unit right there by the beach, beautiful. And so they liked it. So, yeah, so anyway, this is important for us and we need this. I understand about those that can be displaced. HHFDC is getting ready to displace a lot of people in Halawa housing. For the second time, Halawa housing gonna get people displaced. Things happen like that. But in this instance, at least the displacees will get something when they leave. If the owner is forced to turn into a vacation rental, they will get nothing. They will be kicked out with nothing. It's just I wanted to bring that to your attention. You can read my testimony, I submitted it.
I believe we received your testimony a few days ago.
Aloha.
Introduce yourself.
Sure. Do I need to spell my name? My name is Shane Pollitt. I'm a resident here in Oahu. Actually, originally come from Molokai. I'm a native Hawaiian as well. I'm just going to read my testimony. I did submit it, but I'll read it and maybe make a few comments about the importance of why it's important to keep Hawaiians in Hawaii. Again, I'm submitting testimony in strong support of the funding for Waipoli Courtyards Affordable Housing Project on Kauai. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, I believe, to address the housing crisis facing Native Hawaiians and provide a real option for families who want to stay in Hawaii. Native Hawaiians leaving the islands at historic rates. I think there's more Native Hawaiians outside of Hawaii. This happened last year than in Hawaii. And the diaspora has been something that's been in discussion in the Hawaiian community for many years. I think it's 3 decades from what I remember, because they simply can't afford to live here. This project offers an urgent, concrete solution to help people remain connected to our Aina, culture, and our community. We must also be clear-eyed about the reality. The current owner wants to sell this property to DHHL. If this funding doesn't come through, he has every right to sell at market value to a private investor, or worse, redevelop the courtyards into a resort, something he has the zoning to do today. If this happens, it's not just a lost opportunity, it's a devastating blow to the Kauai housing market and another step toward pricing Kanaka Maoli, Native Hawaiians, out of Hawaii. Approving this funding is about more than just units of housing. It's about returning this Aina to Native Hawaiian stewardship. That Aina, that land in Waipoli, that Courtyards of Waipoli sits on, was actually part of King Hunalilo. I don't know if you're familiar with Hunalilo Trust. It was part of his trust, and there's a long story to that as well. But I think it is an empowering tool. This is empowering for Native Hawaiians to bring that idea of stewardship for the Aina there at that particular area, and it brings Native Hawaiians back into that place, that sense of place, and that area, that part of the island. So I just urge the HHFDC board, mahalo for indulging me, to support this loan and help bring this critical project over the finish line. This is our chance to do what's pono, not just for today, but for generations to come. You know, I think that when we talk about Native Hawaiians, we talk about the economy in the state. I believe that Native Hawaiians are the backbone of Hawaii's economy. When you look at the military lands that the military uses, you look at the tourism industry, right? You look at our culture, our language, everything's commodified to lure tourists to Hawaii. I think that just keeping that in mind, there's an adage that goes around out in the community that without Hawaiians, there is no Hawaii. And I strongly believe that as well. I think that it is time to make that acknowledgement. I think that this particular project will address such a very overwhelming issue, it's very overwhelming, which is the diaspora. It's a small way of actually addressing that. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And mahalo nui for this.
Else would like to, well, we have some, well, I was going to take those in the room first, and then I'll ask for those viewing remotely. Is there anyone here in the room that would also like to give testimony on this agenda item?
Morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Charlie Hudson, Chairman of the Wilderness Commission, along with the Director of the Department. I'd like to kind of put this in perspective regarding our program. as we all know, we have about 29,000 on our wait list. On Kauai, there's about 2,372 residential applicants on our wait list. So with respect to the projects we have over there, we don't have enough. We have the Hanapepe, we're doing some single family over there. We're doing some subsistence ag and pastoral in Anahola. But other than that, other than some long-term projects that we've kind of started, it's a while before we will be able to really provide housing for those on the wait list. And as a result of that, a lot of them are dying. A lot of them have moved to the mainland, and unfortunately, affordable housing is something that is very elusive for a lot of our beneficiaries. So this particular project is kind of an innovative one in the sense that we're not using our Act 279 money, the 600 million. We are using our NAHAZA. So we've committed about 25 million. We've leveraged it for this $59 million project. So one of the things that we need to do in order to address the 29,000 people on our wait list is to get innovative. For this particular project, doing townhouses, that's totally brand new for our project. Provides the density, but more importantly, the numbers that are needed to address the people on our wait list. Similar to the Bolodrome, we're looking at 270 units that are gonna take people off the wait list eventually. 155 million that by innovative approaches, we were able to make that happen. So this is kind of setting a precedent whereby we're taking an approach that townhouses, multi-units, high-rises, other things, rather than just a single-family residential, is something that we have to do, not by choice, but by necessity. So with this particular project, I have to say it's been a journey in trying to get it funded. We've submitted several applications. We went after tax credits, were unsuccessful, so we had to pivot. And so this particular approach, our perseverance is paying off. We're looking at we're asking for 13.7 million under the DERF program. You have 90 million that's available. So we're not depleting it, but we're activating the use of those funds. Very valid, a very actually a statutory, a constitutional purpose under our Hawaiian Homes Commission, which is part of our constitution, but more importantly, fiduciary responsibility. So I asked this board to consider that, consider supporting what we're trying to do, consider that we are leveraging, we come into the table with lands, new lands, as well as funding. So with your assistance, we hope to make this a really great project. These are upgraded units, close to the beach in a great location. It's a new homestead community that we're creating here, guys. So I think it's exciting. We're also looking at Lehui, doing about 1,100 there. We acquired about 300 acres from Groves Farm. So we're moving. So this momentum we have, we ask you to continue the momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can ask anyone who is viewing this meeting remotely if you would like to give testimony. Is there anyone?
Sure.
Well, we have one more here.
Yes.
Before we.
Aloha, board. Thank you so much for allowing public testimony.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yes, my name is Kenna Stormo Gibson. I am the Executive Director of the Hawaii Housing Policy Foundation. And as you know, I've been in constant touch with residents in this building. There are 300 residents living at Waipoli, 57 households that are due, according to federal law, a relocation. And it has to be relocation on Kauai. And I was just on the phone this morning with residents saying, hey, where are we moving to? What's happening? Interwest Group is interviewing us, the consultant company hired by DHHL, saying that we're supposed to start moving in June. We're supposed to start packing our bags in June because the sale is happening, but they haven't told us where we're going. They haven't told us how much relocation assistance we're going to receive, how it will be calculated. And the current budget of 1.9 million, when you subtract out everybody's fees, was on public testimony January 8th. That's $23,000 per apartment. $23,000 does not go very far on Kauai. And that's the publicly available relocation plan. And so the only thing I can tell these residents is, you know what, you have every right to be very concerned about this. Because this is not how federal public tax money is supposed to be spent. And what I can say is that these concerns were raised with HUD at the San Francisco level, because residents felt like they're not getting answers. And this is the email I received from Jay Smith, who is the Director of Relocation Services in the San Francisco office. March 28th, we have identified several Uniform Relocation Act concerns related to the project. They have been shared with San Francisco multifamily housing. Okay, so then I receive an email, March 29th, from Shannon Bergman. She's the Director of the Production Division of HUD, who has worked for HUD for over 20 years. And she is now in charge of the Western Division covering 14 Western states. She's been there a while. She knows what she's doing. And she said, multifamily housing has declined to accept an application for mortgage insurance for Waipoli. HUD will not be involved in this project should it move forward. HUD doesn't want to be involved in this. Why? Because they looked at the relocation plan. And the relocation plan has most of the units available off island. Most of the units were on Oahu, some on Big Island. Of the ones listed on Kauai, only 2 were available and they were renting at $9,000 a month. That's fact. So the facts are these residents have reason to be very, very concerned. And many of them are Hawaiian. They are not 50% Hawaiian. They are Hawaiian. Many of them have been living on Kauai. Some have been born and raised on Kauai. I was talking to one of them this morning. He's saying, where am I supposed to go? Others have been there for years. And, there's a woman there, Carolyn Schwartz. She's the Director of Perioperative Services at Wilcox Hospital, which is 15 minutes away from Waipoli. She said, where am I supposed to go? And now if she doesn't have a place to go and she moves to Oahu, what about the people in Kauai that now just lost the Director of Perioperative Services? This is why this project has been controversial since January. January of last year, the original Hawaiian Homes Commission vote for this project was 5-4 against. Against, because why? These are 1- and 2-bedroom rental apartments. These are not townhomes. They're 1- and 2-bedroom rental apartments with limited parking, which is why the Kauai Commissioner, Dennis Nevis, has consistently every single time voted against this project on his island. And he has said on the public record, the beneficiaries that he knows are looking for land, not rental apartments. And they're looking for land on the west side of Kauai, on the east side of Kauai. And the beneficiaries that have actually walked that building have said, no, this is not what I've been waiting decades for. So there's a reason this project has been controversial. And there's a reason why HUD said we will not be involved in this project moving forward due to the relocation plan that was presented and is on public record right now. So until there is a viable relocation plan for all these residents that are calling me, asking me what is going on, we should not be putting public money into this. So I just implore people here who live in Hawaii, who live on these islands and know what it's like to have to find housing with no options, to really reconsider whether this is the best use of funds. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't sign up, but can I?
You can, if you will introduce yourself.
My name is Aikomana Ole, co-manager of Ho'omanapono. That's my husband, Deman. Sorry, I didn't sign up to testify, but I just wanted to point out a few things. With all due respect to the people living in Waipoli, the bottom line is if DHHL doesn't get this, they will be displaced, right? So when all the opposition that I've heard all these months, the opposition's complaints are, where will we go? That question is still gonna be there, whether DHHL purchases it or not, right? If it doesn't go to Hawaiians, it's gonna become a bed and breakfast, right? And so they're gonna have to leave anyway. I don't want anybody to be displaced. But this way they have an option. DHHL is assisting them. But if it becomes a bed and breakfast, they will not get any assistance. So where will I go? Where will I go? That's something that they're gonna have to figure out anyway. This guy wants to give this to Hawaiians. Hawaiians have to struggle for everything in Hawaii. They have to struggle for their own birthright. This person wants to help Hawaiians. And then yet there's so much opposition in saying no. You guys could make a difference in finally getting Hawaiians something that is their birthright that they deserve. I was next to my husband when he made all those phone calls. So I'm not saying that the opposition or whoever, spoke to people and they walked through, but I was there when every single one of them cried. That might not be what everybody wants. Some people want land that, to give Kali credit, he has been doing what my husband calls a buckshot approach. Not everybody on the wait list wants the same thing. And this is an option for many people. Kupuna cannot take care of houses. They cannot take care of yards. So yes, I was there with him when he called, and they all said they just want to come home. They just want something that is their birthright. They don't want to die like thousands of people die on the wait list every year. They want a piece of their birthright. So bottom line is, I just want you guys to think about that. Whether DHHL takes over or not, these people will be displaced. DHHL should not be penalized for something that's going to happen regardless. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to ask if anyone who's viewing the meeting remotely would like to offer testimony. Just raise your hand. Okay. Oh, we have two. Okay, let's go to Raquel Reynolds.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Well, I'm Raquel Reynolds. I'm a Kanaka Maoli, born and raised on Oahu. Though I live on a different island, I am in strong support of Nalu Waipoli. Sorry. This housing crisis does affect all of us. Sorry. Kalamai. This displacement of local families, overcrowding, and loss, it affects all of us. It's not just on Kauai, it's statewide. Like Oahu, Kauai is witnessing families from, wide range, Keiki to Kupuna, being torn from their roots as housing becomes very unaffordable. Even working multiple jobs are overwhelmed. The cost of living is overwhelming for everyone. Sorry, I'm getting emotional because this also affects me. As a child, my mother raised my she was a single mother, raised both my siblings and I. At some point we were houseless for a short period of time. We lived in a car, and often at the time she had a auto shop, and sometimes we stayed there as well. By the time I got in my 20s, I had to work 3 or 4 jobs to depending on the day and the shift. I had to work that much jobs to help my disabled mother and my at the time 2 teenage siblings, because the landlord kept raising our rent And we often was afraid of being evicted. And that's why I took on more jobs, right? To help the raising cost of our rent. And my experience is not the only experience. It's not unique. It happens to many people. In 2010, I worked at a call center and I got to speak to a firefighter on Maui. And I remember we're not allowed to go off script as a telephone interviewer. And I remember he begged for resources because after bills, him and his wife had to choose between paying their mortgage or feeding their family, their children. And it was so bad that often they contemplated if they should get a divorce so the wife could apply for food stamps. And these are impossible choices for families to face when housing pushes them to the brink, right? And I like to echo about the Hawaiian diaspora. My siblings are a number in that statistic, and it's hard for them to come back home. So affording housing isn't just a Kauai issue, it's a statewide crisis. And we must support solutions whenever they arise in every community to prevent more heartbreaking sacrifices.
Ms. Reynolds, thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
wanted to state that I strong support this project.
thank you. I'd like to ask Heilani Sonora Pale, you have your hand raised if you'd like to go ahead and offer testimony.
Aloha, my name is Helene Sonora Pale. I'm Kanaka Maoli, and I am testifying in strong support of the Waiopoli rent-to-own project. My grandmother was on the Hawaiian Homes wait list till the day she died. She passed away with never ever getting an award, raising 8 children pretty much on her own. I've spent years advocating for fully funding DHHL at the state capitol because we all know that Hawaiians are at the bottom of every statistic. We have the worst health, we have the worst socioeconomic, we have we fill the prisons, we have low educational attainment as compared to other groups in Hawaii. Housing is a real important part of getting Hawaiians in bettering Hawaiians' lives. I take real offense to the previous, not Raquel, but the one before her. I take offense to her line of testimony, and it just shows that we really gotta. We have to fight everybody to even get a space for ourselves. Waipoli is a beautiful place. Hawaiians deserve to have this housing option. I have a friend who's on the Hawaiian Home wait list. She's living with her husband, who's also on the wait list, and her 2 sons, who's also on the wait list in Kapa'a, and they're paying $5,000 rent. They have both her and her husband need 4 jobs to support their family, to just pay for the roof over their heads. This is an opportunity for Hawaiians on the wait list. This is a choice. This is something that I know Hawaiians would love. And I fully support this, but mahalo everyone. Mahalo for hearing this. Aloha.
Well, Ms. Pale, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Apologize.
Oh, no worries. Aloha.
Anyone else viewing remotely that would like to give testimony? Okay, if not, guess that'll conclude the testimony phase. Directors, do you have questions? Or we have the developer reps here. We have Mr. Sakata and Mr. Watasi. I have a few questions, so I think they're probably geared mostly for the developer. You guys, one or both? City manager.
Good morning, Chair, board members. I'm Craig Watasi, CEO of Farm Development.
Good morning, Craig. I guess I first want to talk about the loan, the DERF loan. There were some in the analysis by staff, under the review guidelines for the loan. There were some loan factors that were scored as high risk. Those being the loan amount, which is more than 10% of the DERF balance. And the amount is more than 20% of the total project cost. There's no phasing as far as loan increments, and that the loan term is 20 years. I wanted to ask with respect to the project rents. I see you have the affordability mix, which ranges from 30 at the low end up to 120% at the top. Is it capped at a 120 because of the use of DERF, or?
Yes.
It is, okay. As I was looking at the proposed rents, I did note, because I looked at the Kauai rent limits that are published, and that the proposed rents for the 30% units and the 80% units and the 120% one-bedroom units are all at the max rent allowable for Kauai County for the rent limits established by HUD, which is about 58 out of the 82 units. So when there was a survey taken, I guess, of the Kauai beneficiaries as to their interest, were those proposed rents, was that rent structure also provided at the time of that survey to the beneficiaries?
I'm gonna call on my consultant.
So the rents, can you ask the question again?
Yeah, I just,
Christian.
you know, there was sorry, I'm a little disorganized at the moment. The for action mentioned that
I mean, the quick
that
answer.
there was, you know, what I'm trying to get to is, you know, there was an extrapolation of the response over 100% of the list, and there were 2,372 of those who expressed interest. I'm not clear about the methodology of determining the ability of the beneficiaries to accept those rent structures that are pushed up to the very top of the allowable limits for AMIs for the different groups.
Yeah, typically when we underwrite transactions like this, we constantly move to whatever the adjusted AMI range is published by DBET in April or May of the subsequent year. So this is just part of our process that we typically run. And the idea here is that any family making 120% or 30% of median income will only pay 30% of their income in rent and other real estate expenses. And that's exactly what this is attempting to do. In addition to that, DHHL is also providing further rental assistance that's not coming out of any other state pocket through the HHFDC program to subsidize those rents that are necessary for those folks that maybe they needed a 30% unit and that's where their income came in, but we can get them in an 80% unit because the HHFDC's rental subsidy program will also support that. So there's a bunch of different ways in which we can ensure that the Hawaiian community can benefit in totality from the income ranges that are structured in this asset and will benefit all the way through the process. And one last thing, the term of the note is 20 years, but it is everybody's understanding that within the 11th year, all these funds will be, within 6 or 7 years, most funds will be back to DERF, and but within 11 years, all the funds will be repatriated to DERF.
Okay, well, that was another question.
Oh, sorry.
No, thank you for responding to that. So
Chair,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead, Craig.
Well, I just wanted to say to further on the rent structure thing, you know, Mark Development manages about over 500 apartments, all government assisted on Kauai.
Mhm.
And so we have a lot of experience with the marketplace. Having the 120% expands the availability of options because we actually have a lot of people who are desperate for rents on Kauai, especially who are over income qualified for tax credit deals. So, you know, I think, you know, it allows us to reach a broader range on the Hawaiian Homes wait list. And yet Chair Watson is going to provide rental subsidies for those that don't. You know, he wants to go as shallow into the list as possible in awarding these units. So,
Yeah, so kind of a related.
and it's relative, those rents, if you compare it relative to the market rents, which is probably what we should have had on your for action, you know, that would give you a perspective of that it's actually affordable.
Yeah, I'm not questioning whether those rents are established affordable rents, but I've seen in the past, and I've seen this on Kauai, where HUD's rent limits were too high for people to afford the rent. It's
And so,
and it's been in my experience over the years when I worked in housing on Kauai. So, you know, just by the mere fact that HUD publishes those numbers doesn't necessarily mean people can afford those rents.
we absolutely agree with you there. There's no question. So, you know, as we're moving into the project, the other thing that we wanted to do is ensure absorption. And as Craig was saying, a lot of our projects that we're talking about now, whether it's 803 Waimanu or Kokua, 1192 Alakea, you know, those projects are having absorption issues, right? So what this project has done, because it isn't, you know, it's tied to tax credits, is we could open up that range and get at the missing middle in this population of Hawaiians and we're not able to do that anywhere else right now. So it's also broadening our reach to ensure that, you know, the DERF loan is repaid in a timely way. We're reaching more people. Absorption is being taken into consideration. So it's been structured in such a way to really try to manage a lot of the things we're seeing in all of our markets and within the Hawaiian population.
So in terms of absorption, you know, it mentions in the for action, there's a demand interest of 949 beneficiaries. What is your projected absorption rate?
Well, actually, absorption really will be slow. And the reason why absorption will be slow is because the relocation plan can take, you know, 18 to 24 months to take effect. And so absorption will be at the rate that we can relocate in an orderly and appropriate way. So that's really what this is about, is like, you know, we're talking 3-4 units a month at the most, where we're moving people slowly, finding those. Right now, there's 32 units available just on a Zillow Pass on rental properties available in Kauai today, 32 available. And so we're going to work with our team. You know, Craig's a great developer. He's got access to all this portfolio there. And so we're just going to really go slow. So we're not really worried about absorption because we have a full asset. We're just going to take our time and do it in a managed way to ensure that it's a Pono process run by DHHDC.
So will preference be given to Kauai beneficiaries for these loans? I mean, I'm not sure how to
question, and I do not
is
believe.
administered, but
Yeah,
that's my
from my
question.
experience, I have to go down in rank order, regardless of where they are located.
Yeah, I see Colin shaking his head.
Well, there's one clarification. We just wanted to make a clarification that we are looking at, you know, there's the current owner really wants us to close on the property expeditiously. So if it is approved today, we wanted to make a note that we have a multiple different other loan options, whether it's a bank debt or some type of other instrument that's not a HUD, you know, product. And so we just wanted to make sure that within this for action, DHHL and Craig have the rights to source any commercial loan to finalize the capital stack.
So with regard to relocation assistance, I did look at your relocation exhibit and plan. We also spoke a little bit about it last week, and you indicated that it's been, that your relocation plan has been submitted to HUD. Has it come back yet, approved?
Well, and because DHHL is a Native Hawaiian organization, they have a sovereignty over their determination of how they operate the Nahasda program. And just like other tribal nations, HUD can advise tribal nations and the Hawaiian DHHL on what's appropriate, did you meet the requirements? They reviewed the HUD plan and they gave recommendations. Those recommendations were accepted by DHHL staff, and that was sent back to HUD. HUD reviewed it at that time and did not approve it, but says it's in compliance with what you would need to be in compliance with. So HUD, in a world like HPHA, the Housing Authority, HUD has a little bit more control there with approval rights. In this circumstance, Nahasda is the approving board at DHHL.
So who would monitor compliance with the relocation assistance?
DHHL staff through the Nahasda program and their connection with HUD would monitor the plan and the process. And they have identified an individual ad staff to do that, and that person is named in the relocation plan.
Also in the plan, it does talk about the maximum amounts that are available through URA benefits. And then it also has an exception in the case of last resort housing situations, which given the current state of the housing market on Kauai, you have a strong probability of being in that situation, I think.
Pretty much every household, yes, sir.
Everyone. So does that, it says in this exhibit that there is no maximum amount for payments under last resort housing. And that such payment under last resort housing must be offered if comparable replacement housing is not available at a price that would result in a payment lower than $9,570, which is the cap outside of that exception. So
sure.
What kind of, you've given a budget of about $2.3 or $2.4 million for relocation assistance. What impact will the last resort housing have on that budget line item?
That budget's structured with last resort housing in mind. If you took the 57 households times 9,000, obviously that budget is quite de minimis compared to the budget we're offering. So that budget of 2.4 million is considerably more than the maximum amount allowable unless you move to last resort housing. So our assumption is that all folks are last resort. And so we've done, again, slower relocation timetable allows us to absorb units at a reasonable pace within the market, which allows the delta between the rents at the property versus the rents that they'll be going to stay reasonably stable over time. That's why the program doesn't have us moving very fast, right? To maintain that approach will cause less stress in the overall housing market and reduce the total cost of the program.
One more question for relocation. Sorry to go on with this one. It's mentioned in the 4 action that the Hawaiian Homes Commission voted on January 26th of 2024 to allocate the Nahasda money for this project. And then it's later mentioned that 17 households have vacated the property. I believe that subsequent to the decision or the vote taken by the Hawaiian Homes Commission. So are those 17 households entitled to benefits under the URA?
I'd have to ask our consultant to confirm, but my understanding is if they vacate the premises prior to the completion of the process and a determination of eligibility for that process, then it becomes a little bit more difficult for us to help them.
But I also understand that under the Uniform Relocation Act, there are notification requirements. There's some early notifications even when you're thinking or contemplating of applying for financing to it that's covered by URA, that results in an acquisition or a rehab. So wouldn't they be, if they weren't notified, shouldn't they have been? And
No,
should
they were
be-
notified. Everybody
They
was
were,
issued a
okay.
gin notice and on the property, there were meetings held. There were certified mailers sent, and we have records and copies of all that information.
Yeah, I mean, if they were entitled, would you be able to track them and find them?
Yes, we have that information. We can track them down if they're entitled, yes, sir.
Okay. If the, going back to the DERF loan, if what you're saying is that it could be repaid in 6 or 7 years through the, I guess, the cash flow, operating cash flow of the project, why are we giving a 20-year term?
No, that's not operating cash flow. Depending on how things are moving with the buyers, you know, I said that we're paying 95% of free cash flow. So the balance of the DERF loan is constantly declining over the period. And so that all I'm saying is that that by the time we get to year 10 or 11, we will be able to do the transfer of units and do the takeout and everything will get repaid. We could, the DHHL and Mark Development could elect to start that process sooner, depending on the financial wherewithal of the community, because any kind of prepayment penalty or anything that could exist would be de minimis at that point. So we could start look at perhaps providing funding back, the DERF monies back sooner and quicker. It just depends on how that shakes out over time.
My ears hurt 6 to 7 years, so I wanted to ask you that question. And question for you, Dean, have we given a DERF loan for acquisition or rehab for 20 years terms? Have we done that?
There have been legislative appropriations, for example, Kukui Gardens was a 30-year term.
Okay, but that was through the legislative.
But Chair, this goes to your point about, yeah. This goes to your rent to own. This is how DERF becomes a rent to own vehicle right here.
Okay, directors, any further questions? What? Okay.
Sure, I'll just state that,
yeah,
this is a project that we looked at very closely. There's quite a bit of discussion among staff. We were very mindful of the displacement issue, given that, as you know, on Kauai, there's very limited rental inventory available. We do support the project because at the end of the day, we did confirm with the county that the owner does have the right to elect to convert the units to vacation rentals. And given that risk, given that the risk of displacement remains, you know, with or without the action of DHHL, that is why we support this action.
Okay. If no further questions or discussion, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. SF, you'd go ahead and take that.
So when I call your name, please respond with I in favor of and nay if opposed to. So first, Gary Mackler.
Nay.
Sean Sasaki. Jason Bradshaw.
Strong support, aye.
Jay Kimura.
Aye.
John Mende.
Aye.
Luis Salavera.
Aye.
And Mary Alice Evans.
7 ayes. Six ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
See one. The vote's the vote. Okay, let's go on to the next agenda item. This is under section 3F of our agenda. This is information on the lease fee purchase price for 41-573 Enoa Street, Waimanalo, Oahu, TMK number 4-1-033-129. Good morning.
Morning, Lorna Kumitani, Real Estate Services Section Chief. This for information really seeks to address a request that has been made to the, HHFDC from Ms. Nani Brown, lessee of the subject property, requesting to be added to the Board of Directors meeting to discuss the appraisal and lease fee purchase process. She had initially put the property onto the market and requested to purchase the fee. Unfortunately, we weren't able to process her request in a timely manner that met the requirements of her sale. So this, for information, really gives her the opportunity to address the board.
Okay. Please come up, introduce yourself.
All right, sorry, I sat in a warm seat and it caught me off guard. Sorry. Aloha, my name is Nani Brown. I have been here a little bit more than 1 year ago today, when you guys were also having a meeting regarding the rent increase for Hale'aupuni. As you guys know, it is currently at $146.90 a month, and the proposed lease fee increase is $2,000 and some odd dollars a month. Right, so at that point, that was when Lorna gave the presentation that she didn't think that giving the residents notice would be prudent of such a large increase, because she said they thought it would confuse them. Which I thought is actually pretty rude, but either way. I had a conversation with Lorna in March, and at that point, she gave me 3 weeks. At that point, she would have an appraiser, and here we are in May. I have had no subsequent communication with her. We started this process in November of 2023. So we're going on 2 years. As you guys know, this is antithetical to your mission as far as housing people. I have found many first-time, also Native Hawaiian buyers. I'm also Native Hawaiian. I realize legally I cannot prefer Kanaka in a legitimate sale, but we are looking. I only have, we had such a powerful meeting earlier about the way Hawaiians are getting pushed out. All my brothers and sisters are, so, sorry, except for I have one brother left here. And it's true, mainland Hawaiians are different than Hawaii Hawaiians. It's very true. Either way, I only have 1 unit. I intend to sell it to somebody who is local. I'm not trying to make money. I only have 1 unit. I just want to get out of it. That's all. I'm not trying, if I can break even, I would be happy. I came up with a cash offer, $350,000. With my price into it, it still brings it at $730,000, $700,000. And I would be willing to sell it at that, which is well below current market price in that area. And that area right now is over 800, 850, some of it even more. With the current conditions, because the lease is out in 2030, nobody can get a loan. So I'm stuck with a cash buyer. We don't have a lot of Hawaiians with that kind of money for cash. So what I am asking for is just a fair deal. I have no problem signing any paperwork, creating any conditions that make it so I don't make a whole bunch of money. Again, I'm an electrician. I wire these houses. I work in construction, 27 years. This is my only property besides the one I live in. So I'm not here to be a developer or to make a bunch of money. Again, I am just asking for the lease fee I had to be able to purchase it in order to sell this house. You know, that's all, and I'm just, you know, begging for consideration at this point for close to 2 years.
So from what I have read, the staff is in the process of going through procurement to select an appraiser. I think the previous appraisal costs were starting at 5,000 or higher. They were considered excessively high to appraise, but that is moving forward from what I understand. And maybe Laura come up with update the board after.
Yeah, 2 years to find an appraiser is still an obtuse amount of time for such a simple task.
Thank you for your testimony. Laura, you want to come up and give us an update?
So currently, we have a solicitation prepared and it's pending approval to be released. The intended release date is tomorrow if it is signed, so we can post it. It takes up the response due date will be May 23rd. I just want to clarify for the board. After the request had come in from Ms. Brown, and this would be in March of 2024 to purchase the fee, we did seek the professional services list that we have as far as appraisers are concerned. We knew because prior to her request coming in, we were planning to get an appraiser, you know, as part of the lease, the new lease rent process. The new lease policy. However, in talking with the appraisers that are familiar with our program, right, have done appraisals for us before, specifically for leasehold property, as well as seeking, again, the professional services list appraisers. At that time, they were busy. I mean, that was the common response that we got, as well as the cost is high because they're busy. So we didn't think that the lessees would be willing to pay that high amount just to get an appraisal amount in which they might decide at that point that they can't afford it, right? So we feel that this procurement process is fair, right, for the lessees, as well as, you know, hoping to get the lowest cost that they would have to pay, and just to find out what that amount is.
Question, Director.
Lorna, this is an opportunity for me to get a little bit of status on this. How many of the original lots in Haleakuni have purchased the fee, and how many are still left with leasehold agreements?
So there were a total of 190 lots in Haleakuni, and I want to say that there is 9 or 10 that are remaining in this.
It's 12.
And I think we've seen over the years as housing prices escalated and ground leases, you know, appraisal value of the ground leases have gone up based on cost of housing, especially in this area. It's become harder and harder. There's some purchasers to. I wasn't sitting on the board when that policy was finalized, but was there any consideration given to trying to look back at the prices that some buyers got when they purchased the fee, and try to more affordable for the current problems?
I think that would be a policy decision, maybe even a board decision, as far as fixing the sales prices that were offered back in the 1990s. Definitely something that we could consider as far as whether or not we would entertain that, how we would get to that amount.
Well, these are duplexes, so
yes,
the lots are extremely small.
Yes, about 3,500 square feet maybe.
And a shared wall.
Yes.
And it's a thin wall.
So for Ms. Brown's benefit, so you said the procurement, it's an RFQ, it sounds like to me. So that will be, there'll be a selection perhaps at the end of May. Is that what I heard? Okay, and then you have any kind of time frame that you can provide that for having the approval, the selection and the contract and the work and the information?
30 to 45 days after we get the bids, basically, to have an appraiser.
Directors, any other questions for Laura? No, thank you, Laura. Okay. We will, everybody okay? Need a break? Oh, yeah, we're good. Oh, you're right? Okay, thank you. Item 3G is the next item on our agenda today, and this is information regarding the Ohana Hale Affordable Housing Project located in Makali, Oahu, TMK number 12-3-028-004. Albert is back.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. My name is Albert Palmer, the Development Section Chief here. I think I forgot to introduce myself the first time. This is for information only. The Ohana Hale project is a proposed 180 unit affordable and market for sale condominium housing project in Makali, Mo'iliili. On March 12th, 2015, the board approved a 4-action certifying MJF Development Corporation or other successor entity as an eligible developer and authorizing the project's application for 201H exemptions. On May 6, 2015, the Honolulu City Council approved the resolution for the 201H exemptions and made certain changes to the project and imposed a construction commencement deadline, which at that time was May 6, 2017. On May 14, 2015, the board approved a 4-action approving the amendments made by the City Council and also approving a DERF loan of up to $16,146,000. Umehana Hui LP was approved as the successor entity for the project on September 28th, 2015. It was comprised of MJF Development Corporation with 3 other partners. On October 18th, 2018, a building loan agreement or BLA was executed for the DERF loan. The construction commencement deadline under the DERF BLA was extended several times. Lastly, by letter dated May 22nd, 2019, which granted extension of 1 year at that time to the commencement deadline, making it May 6th, 2020. That letter had stated there would not be further extensions. On April 1st, 2020, the developer did request a further extension. At that time, only 21 of 180 units had been contracted. And at the same time, the developer notified HHFDC of the dissolution of Pumehana Hui LP due to issues with the partners which resulted in dissolution litigation. HHFDC informed the developer that in accordance with the prior letter, no further extension could be granted. The DERF commencement deadline passed on May 5th, 2020, and HHFDC issued a letter informing the developer that the DERF loan was terminated. The loan had not closed and no funds had been dispersed. On September 9th, 2020, the construction commencement deadline contained in the Honolulu City Resolution was further extended to May 6th, 2024. As of the date of this for action, as of the date of this for information, the project has not started construction. Consequently, the 201H exemptions have now expired. In February 2022, the developer informed HHFDC that in addition to the dissolution suit, there was also a foreclosure suit in progress. Reportedly, the partner that the developer was trying to eject purchased the senior loan and is the plaintiff in the foreclosure suit. On June 1st, 2022, HHFDC was notified by the developer's attorney that the plaintiff in the foreclosure suit filed a motion to add HHFDC as a defendant because of HHFDC's declaration of land use restrictive covenants, or DLRC. The dissolution case and foreclosure case have been consolidated. Trial is currently scheduled for September 29th, 2025. As the DERF loan has been terminated and the resolutions relating to the 201H exemptions have expired, HHFDC may seek to remove itself as a party from the lawsuit, which may require removing its DLRC from the property. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Director's questions for Mr. Paul. So is there, I guess, as far as removing HHFDC as a defendant, is that decision pending, or is it something that you're seeking guidance on?
Is this something we would want to?
Well, I don't know if we want to discuss this.
Yeah. Chair, this is Louis. Quick question. Since this may have a discussion related to maybe legal advice, and I know it's for information only, but is this something that we may need to take up in executive session possibly?
Yes, there is. So yes, I would say that would be appropriate, Louis.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we can withdraw my question, and there's no other discussion. We can just receive this presentation from Mr. Paul.
Chair, if I could request maybe add this to the next agenda as a potential executive session item because of maybe the legal ramifications associated with it.
I'll defer that to council if there's any need to, and our executive director, if they feel there's any need to bring this back to the board for any reason.
Okay.
And if so, then we would take it under executive session to discuss.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item on the agenda under section 3, which is item 3H, and this is information on the 2024 Hawaii Housing Planning Study.
We have a couple minutes to set up our presentation, please.
Yeah, and this would be a great time for a recess. So we'll take a 5.
She's gonna retire though? Yes. She's gonna retire then.
Yeah, we'll call the meeting back to order. And this is, this agenda item is the information on the 2024 Hawaii Housing Policy Planning Study. Go ahead and.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Dean Wakase. I'm the Housing Planning Manager here at HHFDC. Today, we are providing information on the 2024 Hawaii Housing Planning Study. On August 11, 2022, HHFDC entered into a contract with SMS Research to prepare the housing study. The housing study is a detailed planning document that evaluates current housing conditions in Hawaii. It includes demographic and economic profiles of households, assesses housing needs and preferences, addresses the needs of unique populations, and updates information on the housing inventory. The housing study is led by HHFDC and is done in partnership with several housing agencies, including DHHL, HPHA, DHS, and the housing agencies from all 4 counties. On September 27, 2024, HHFDC was given notice that Ward Research will be acquiring the contract of the housing study from SMS. The contract was formally reassigned to Ward on October 24, 2024. Before I turn over the presentation over to Ward, I just want to thank Rebecca Soon for agreeing to take over this project midstream. I know it's not easy to start work on any project when it's halfway done. With that.
Thank you. Oh, am I the slide advancer too? Aloha Chair Mackler, aloha board. It's wonderful to be here. This is actually my first time in this particular board, although I've certainly been in other similar settings. So excuse my nerves a little bit. It's wonderful to meet those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to work with, and it's wonderful to see old faces that I have had the opportunity to work with many times. My name is Rebecca Soon. I'm a principal at Ward Research. Ward Research has been in Hawaii's market research arena for about 45 years now, founded by Becky Ward, who some of you have probably seen in spaces like this. I'm here with my colleague, Ryan Sasaki, who's one of our fabulous analysts and who's going to take all the hard questions. And I'm also here with Faith Rex, a pillar who I'm sure many of you know in Hawaii's research community as well for many years. Faith and her team carried over, did a lot of the work when SMS was the prime on this contract, and we were really thankful and appreciative that she was willing, along with Jim Dannemiller, who I'm sure many of you know, and other really talented analysts, to be willing to continue on this work and getting it over the finish line with us. So I know you folks have had a long day. It was actually really enriching to sit here this morning and get an opportunity to sort of touch and feel in a way that I don't think a lot of folks do when we see headlines and read things externally about the important work that's in front of you. So thank you for giving us the grace of being at the end of your agenda. I'll do my best to be fast, although for those that know me, I'm a little verbose. So Chair, don't be afraid to move me along. I won't be offended. So my goal here is just to give you folks a few highlights. This is a very rich report, as you know it always is. There's far more data than we're going to be able to cover in this conversation, or possibly even before the next report comes around. My hope is to give you enough highlights that help you in the work that you folks are doing and in the decisions that are before you, like some of the ones that we saw this morning. Just a little bit of context to add on to what Dean shared, and I appreciate Dean's acknowledging our team, but really Dean, Carrie, Chris, before we lost him, Mike, have been incredibly phenomenal partners to work with. And I think that you all know, and perhaps we don't always acknowledge how important the folks are that work within the agencies. This report would not be here today without their really hard work, dedication, patience, as well, and coordination. The partners that Dean mentioned, very disparate interests. lots of different priorities, things happening. And so managing that, helping it keep on track and helping it ensure that we're moving forward has been really critical. Director support has been present the entire time that I've been on board, so really appreciate that as well. Okay, jumping in. So again, just real quick on some context things. As Dean mentioned, this report was began in 2022. HHFDC got an early start. This is a report that has come out every 5 years-ish since the 1990s. And Jim Dannemiller and the team at SMS, now led by Faith and her team, have been the ones stewarding it. So in many ways, they are sort of the father and grandfather of this work. And what we have come to learn in comparing across jurisdictions, all states pretty much do this report in some form or another. Hawaii is far ahead of the curve. Hawaii incorporates far more complex methodology, considers much more questions. We'll talk a little bit about some of the survey work that was done to help inform this study. Many states are kind of in the very elementary state of where are we at? Hawaii, this study actually is a really valuable planning tool in that regard. So that's kudos to folks who have been working on this for far longer than I have. This particular study projects out to 27, which I know feels like tomorrow. And it is in many ways. But I think that, you know, we've talked about doing an update for 2030, but the underlying findings and the message and themes here are the same. Whether we're talking about 27 or some of the work we've started for 2030, the underlying messages are the same. So I think that I believe that this is going to be really valuable for the work that you folks have ahead of you. And in particular, I also want to flag from a context setting standpoint, I mentioned 2022 is when this started. Folks may realize that that was prior to the West Maui fires. And so the Maui particular data is dated. That said, I think that we as research team, and I think a layperson even could agree that the issues that we're going to highlight today are primarily only underscored and exacerbated by that particular event and the set of circumstances that have come from it. This will give you just a general sense of the report. So it's a 214-page report with 100 some odd page appendix. Again, a lot of rich data, but this gives you an idea of how we break it down and how we're intending to help walk through it. And it follows a very similar format to what it has in previous years. First, we're going to look at what our current situation is, how many housing, then so essentially, what do we have now? Then what do we need? We go into a little bit of depth to understand the nuances within the housing market, right? Not all things that look like our home are a home, act like a home, behave like a home, serve as a home, et cetera. We delve into some policy opportunities, and this is where some of the research that SMS and the research team did, really talking story with stakeholders. I'm guessing perhaps many of you, or certainly your staff here at HHFDC, were informants into that, but agencies across Hawaii help to inform discussions around some of the policy opportunities. These should be taken as opportunities, not as gospel, but as things to think through and things to consider, again, as potential priorities. Then we delve even further into segments within the housing market. This is, as we know, whether we're talking about various AMI levels, unique and acute housing needs for our seniors, for those living with developmental disabilities, for those exiting homelessness, et cetera. That's what that section focuses in and around. We also have a dedicated section there to understanding more deeply some of the demand throughout the Department of Fine Homelands, both in terms of beneficiaries that are already on lands, beneficiaries that are on the wait list, as well as eligible beneficiaries who may not yet be on the wait list. And finally, we again talk more about understanding programs and individuals who are already residing within government programs, but are perhaps either going to graduate out of those. So this is supportive housing, or whether there's a permanent need for that supportive housing, which is the case for many individuals in that particular circumstance. This there's a good amount of the report that for folks that are particularly interested in understanding each of the county level. Oh, sorry, I got a little discombobulated. Is that a word? My slides got mixed around a little bit. Thanks, Mike. Oh. Slipped too quickly. Okay, so essentially here, this is our first step, which is understanding, this is the first step in calculating. So don't worry, we'll get to the big number that I know everyone's anxious and looking for. But this is our first step in getting there. This is understanding what is currently available and what the current occupancy status is of houses and of homes here in Hawaii. And so we look at total housing units, and that could be any number of ownership structures, that could be any number of uses, but it is specifically housing units, and it could be any size household. So we have 568,000 housing units across Hawaii. Of that, about 516,000 of that are actually available. There are a variety of reasons, and if folks are interested, happy to delve into that a little bit later, but there are a variety of reasons why some of those units are unavailable, construction, vacant, et cetera. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But 516,000 then, that's actually available housing stock to meet the needs of our residents. Looking a little bit further in terms of housing stock at a county level, there's quite a bit of space in the report dedicated to understanding the county specific needs. The report does within the body essentially go through each of these categories and then look at the counties. So it's not so much that, you know, there's one big Maui County section or one big Kauai County section. Rather, all of these sections discuss the statewide as well as the county specific data within them. Here we see just generally how each of the counties comprise housing stock and how that has shifted over time. Honolulu has also noted that the 2020 census did calculate, and we're not exactly sure the exact percentage based upon the census calculations, but that some portion of the 54,000 units that were added since 2010 are actually perhaps were undercounted previously. So again, we get into when we start digging into the data, we get to lots of nuances where things may be made up of a lot of different factors. A lot of this report is about understanding what the big picture is. The second step then is, go back in this order. No, my fault. Okay, also just kind of understanding our current conditions. In general, Hawaii's units are in pretty good condition compared to national standards. Very few are in substandard condition. There are some pockets where that's less so the case, but in general, much of Hawaii's housing units are in good condition compared to the national averages. Okay, so our next step then is estimating what the demand is. And again, reasonable minds differ about a lot of these different components and what should be included and how much should be included. I think this is part of really good ongoing evolution for HHFDC to think about and consider in the future. Again, this is part of the curse of being ahead of the curve for the nation, that you get to set some standards. But essentially what we did this year, and it was in partnership with quite a number of, with the various participating agencies, was to start first, which this report has always done, with the number of occupied housing units. So this was in 2022, there were 494, essentially 1,000 occupied housing units. We looked at pent-up demand. This is folks that are, you know, multiple homes, multiple households to a home. They don't necessarily want to be living multi-generationally in the home, but they are what folks would call sort of our hidden housing demand. If there were units available, essentially they would move into them. Then we have a number of estimates here that we think are relatively conservative, but they give you a sense that you have individuals who are exiting homelessness, and then you have individuals that are exiting some of those government service programs that we mentioned earlier that are going to comprise additional demand. Again, we're looking at by 2027. And then lastly, we look at units that are vacant and available. You know, this one I find it easiest to explain this particular line item by giving the example of, at any given time, there's homes that are for sale on the market for homes that are for rent on the market, and they're largely vacant. Right, they're perhaps staged, but there's not a house, there's not a family living in them. You know, if I were, sorry to use you an example, Jason, but if I were to, Director, for example, if you were moving out of a home and I were moving into your home, you wouldn't move out on June 1 and I move in on June 2nd, right? There'd be some period of delay where essentially our households are taking up more than our share of two homes. And so that's what this number reflects, that yes, once we do settle in and move into our respective places, that then there's some other families that are in the same scenario, right? And so this essentially just accounts for the idea that no matter how efficient we make the market, no matter how many homes that we build, there will always be some number that is going to just be vacant because that's how the market works. Okay, I'm gonna try to be a little swifter, Chair. We okay overall?
Yes.
Okay, got it, pick it up. Okay, that's very kind. Very Hawaii style kind of, okay. Okay, so essentially this is where we bring the numbers together and we see that we have the adjusted housing supply that we mentioned earlier. We minus that out for what the demand is, and this is where we have our housing shortage. There are some adjustments that we make below the first blue row, and that is primarily to account for the future growth that's anticipated and the demand that comes for that growth. But essentially the total housing needed unit, the total housing needed units are 64,490 by 2027. A couple of just quick notes to add here. This is a jump up from the 2019 number, which was about just over 50,000. And part of that is because of a change in methodology. We did include this year for the first time units that are in the pipeline. So this is units that we relied upon the counties as partners to identify which units were likely going to be built, which were specifically for residents, and which were likely all God's aligned to be built and open by 2027. We also added to this the swap space that I just described and accounted for that. This is the magical table that counties rely upon, and obviously this agency and other state agencies as well to sort of help guide and understand. Again, not all units are created equal. So it's not simply needing 64,000 units to support our communities. In fact, we know that 73% of Hawaii households are 80% AMI and below. And so that is where we see the primary demand coming from. We collapse this down a little bit so it's a little bit easier to look at, and you can see here, and I'm sorry, these units needed per county are off by I think 1 for each of them. That we made slight adjustments after we started the PowerPoint, but the total statewide is still the 64,490. Honolulu is 25,710. Maui is the number you see there. I'm sorry, Maui is 14,987. Hawaii County is the numbers you see there, and Kauai County is 4,914. As I mentioned, large number of the units that are needed are for households that are 80% AMI and below, and specific about 65%, and that's what this graphic here tries to help illustrate. About 65% of the overall statewide units that are needed are for 80% AMI and below. A large portion are needed for 30% AMI and below. That's what you see in the green here. And then a much smaller portion, about 15%, are needed for, about 30% are needed for the higher category. I'm happy to sort of delve into those numbers more if that's helpful. Let's skip to this one. Okay, perfect. So just a few county by county breakdowns to highlight for you, and then I'll wrap, and happy to go back to anything that would be helpful to discuss more fully. And these are some of the statewide numbers here. And just a couple of things quickly to note here that, this is taking into account also that we know that we have significant outmigration, right? I mean, folks have heard about it all morning. I can imagine folks hear about it every meeting, every decision that you folks have. Approximately 70 to 80,000 per year residents are leaving Hawaii. That works out to about 212 people a day that are leaving Hawaii. That's not the net, but that's how many people are leaving. The net then works out to closer to about 6,000 to 10,000. So we are seeing in the last few years a decline in population. And one of the things that the survey asked residents was whether or not they were considering moving in the next 5 years. And this was primarily a way to just help with the AMI level projections, but also just to kind of understand how households are feeling. And we saw that approximately estimated 40,000 families are considering leaving in the next 5 years. About 60% of those are noting that that housing is among the primary driver for that affordable housing. And we heard, earlier, obviously, that acute need within the Native Hawaiian community. Approximately 15% of the Native Hawaiian community is looking at potentially leaving Hawaii in the next 5 years. In Honolulu specifically, Honolulu is, an interesting example of where we see population declines, but increase in households. So this is sort of an interesting problem that that housing planners like yourselves all have. It's not just about building more units for more people. It's about also understanding that our household makeup is going down. So our household size is about 2.8, which is the lowest it's been since before this study has been done. That also means that although, yes, population is going down, so Honolulu, as an example, over the 2020 to 2023 period, population as a whole went down 19,000 individuals. The households actually went up by 2,000. So obviously, when we talk about housing units, we're looking more specifically at households rather than just population individuals. Looking at Hawaii County, Hawaii County is interesting. It's in many ways, it's the only county that's actually seeing a population increase. It also has the greatest demand for those for DHL applicants who are interested in moving, should housing be available. Hawaii County is the preferred location for that. And so despite most of those who are on the applicant wait list being here on Oahu. So just sort of an interesting sort of heightened demand that Hawaii County is seeing as well. Hawaii County also has the largest share of lower income households that are severely cost burdened, meaning that they're spending the greatest amount of their income on housing compared to other counties. Maui County, again, this is before West Maui, but these are just, I think these issues are just deepened. Maui County does have the highest proportion among all counties of households whose shelter costs are 50% or more of their income. So as you folks know, one of the key measurements is what percentage of income a household is utilizing on their housing related expenses. And that's obviously a driver to determine whether it's affordable or not. Maui County has the greatest participation of individuals that are spending the highest amount of their income towards housing expenses. On Kauai County has the highest proportion of housing stock that is unavailable to residents due to vacation and short-term rental use. This is a really acute issue that's hitting all communities across Hawaii, but is especially impactful on Kauai. Something that's an interesting and difficult finding is that Kauai County, for example, teaches us that it's not enough to just build. You got to build things that residents are going to be the ones living in. And so Kauai County, as an example, between 2010 and 2020, Kauai County built nearly 4,900 units. That's pretty close to what the demand is between now and 2027. However, it actually resulted in a net loss of 334 units. And that is primarily for a number of reasons, but the primary driver with that was because the units were being moved into vacation rentals. And so you have, again, an incidence of understanding that new construction can often feed the vacation rental market rather than the resident market. I heard Chair Watson earlier talk about there being 2,302, I believe he said, DHL applicants on the wait list. Obviously, those would be for residents. So some of the strategy is important to continue to support. Okay, just going to highlight here that there's essentially factors that are closing the gap, and factors that are widening the gap. So it's the math, gets much deeper as we dive in further. And I'm sure as folks read this report, there'll be lots more gems and hopefully to help the work. But essentially that we are seeing that the efforts that counties are making to curb illegal vacation rentals has been helping to return a number of those units into the housing market. We're also seeing, of course, that the pipeline is helping to address the gap as well. There are a number of factors, though, that counties and that the state are fighting, that our residents are struggling against. Out-of-state buyers is a significant driver here. We see that out-of-state buyers pay on average 60% more than local buyers for the homes that they're purchasing. And so our local families are getting just swallowed up by folks who are not necessarily going to move here. So it's one thing, and that's perhaps a gap of data that may be worth exploring further, is how many of those out-of-state buyers are actually moving here versus how many are buying them speculatively, either for themselves or for other reasons. Seasonal units really are draining supply. We talked about that on Kauai, but it's happening across the state. Again, new construction does not always address the gap, so ensuring that new construction is structured in such a way that it is addressing the gap areas. And the military presence, we explored in the report as well, just to help to understand the impact that military households, and in particular their buying potential and their capacity to pay is through their basic allowance for housing, or the BAH rates, impacts the market as well. And lastly, and then I'll stop, Chair, I promise, is we can turn off my mic, throw it out the window, is just wanting to highlight the widening gap for households, the need for 80% and 30% MI units. So whether we stuck with the 2019 methodology or whether we go with the methodology that we utilized this year, which I described had some updates, in either scenario, we're seeing that the overall percentage of the units needed are increasing at the 80 and 30%. So essentially, all factors combined, positive and negative, all the things that are helping widen or close the gap, what's being addressed are the units above 80% AMI. And the units below 80% AMI are having a growing need. So we're seeing just increases in both of those. Okay, I promised you I'd stop. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of this work.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions?
I look forward to seeing the 214 pages.
And I know you'll read it. So.
That will be posted on the HHFDC website.
It will be. I think we're just finalizing the last few edits, and then we'll post it on our website.
I hope there's an executive summary.
There is, yeah. And it's shorter than my words.
So what percentage of the overall need is above 140%? I see, your charts go.
Yeah, I think it's 15%. That's above 140.
Yeah. Of that total.
Yeah. And there's some areas where there's actually negative. So there's sort of surplus of units, especially I think in the single family market.
Thank you again. Thank you. Look forward to reading the report.
Okay, thank you again.
Okay, we do have section 4, which is the report of the executive director.
Legislative session.
Everybody's smiling now that the session is.
Yes. Good morning. I'm Nyros, the legislative coordinator. The legislature did adjourn last week, Friday, May 2. The governor's bill review period begins. He has until June 24 to inform the legislature of any bill he intends to veto. Here's some highlights of the bills we supported. Senate Bill 79, Conference Draft 1, streamlines the historic review process for affordable housing projects by requiring DLNR to make a determination on the project's effect on various factors. We had this bill in the governor's package that didn't make it, but we're really happy that this one did. House Bill 1409, Conference Draft 1. Among other things, it creates a 5-year Tier 2 sub-account under the Rental Housing Revolving Fund. HHFDC will be able to finance projects outside the Tier 1 first priority for the missing middle, and projects in TOD areas will be prioritized. House Bill 1298, Conference Draft 1, establishes a government employee housing program within HHFDC that initially prioritizes government employees, but is open to all residents. It is financed by DERF, and it also includes one position. Next, I want to share some highlights on the budget bill. House Bill 300, Conference Draft 1, contains for the fiscal biennium $100 million for rental housing revolving fund, $100 million for Tier 2, and $40 million for the dwelling unit revolving funds. Lastly, I would like to close with some thanks. I want to thank the following individuals for being part of the HHFDC legislative team and their willingness to contribute on top of their regular tasks. So we have David Oy, Randy Chu, Ali Osumi, Gail Nishimoto, Hunter Miller, and most importantly, Dean Minakami and Dean Watasi. Session waits for no one, and you all understand that, and I'm proud to work with such a dedicated team.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to really commend Cynthia for her work. I mean, the number of bills that we were tracking this year was the most that we never had in recent years. She did a great job in making sure, hearing testimony for all the bills, and Ryan needs to go every day during session.
Yeah, I lost count of how many times he had to go. Be present here. So, thank you very much to the team. Appreciate that.
So for legislation, I'll just, simply mention for the Tier 1 HHRF funding, $50 million for each year biennium. For Tier 1 and Tier 2, there is $40 million for the second year of the biennium. We also did receive direct awards from HRF for HPHA, which we'll be administering. So it's funding that the legislature is directing for the Kalaimomi projects that are going to RHRF that we will be basically awarding to HPHA. So that's an additional $50 million, which is not included in the amount that is available for other projects. Some key bills that we were supporting, one that has created a mixed income sub-account for workforce rental housing. The bill that we were supporting would have allowed us to transfer funds between what's called Tier 1 versus Tier 2. Unfortunately, that bill did not pass, but there was what's called a skinny version that did pass, which unfortunately is just a pilot, a 5-year pilot, and it's unfunded. So we're gonna have to work on getting the funds into the sub-account next session. Another priority for us was the third equity program, which, as you folks are aware, has been very popular. The pilot program allowed up to $10 million to be expended, of which I think about $7.5 million has already been expended. We're trying to make that a permanent program and to also expand the program to allow us to purchase equity in projects. It fortunately didn't make it past conference. So we'll continue to work on that to either expand the program or to hopefully make it permanent. For the finance branch, just want to note that they had 2 financial closings past month for Holly Paulina and the Clay Mile project. So that represents 304 units and $54 million of rental house revolving funds. So I'd like to thank the finance branch for their hard work. I also commend the developers of those projects because we know there's a lot of work to get to that point. And for the consolidated applications for financing, we're coming to the board next month for the 9% awards. You might recall that last year we set the bar higher to receive the 4% award. We told developers, please work on getting your projects more ready. And indications are that developers did respond favorably, so we anticipate making a number of 4% awards this year also. That'll be starting in July and later. And just wanted to, final item is that We've been working with the city to transfer the Kapolei infrastructure to them. The city is requesting $60 million, which is a large sum, yes, but it is still a discount from what it would cost us to maintain those roadways. So we are having those discussions with the city and we'll come to the board for an approval at some point later this year, hopefully.
Thank you, Dean. Any questions for Dean? That will ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting. Is there a motion? We have a second. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
No, it's an